Friday evening here on the East Coast of the United States. That means it's time for John Cullen to investigate. John, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jason. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, John. You know, I can't say for sure, but it definitely feels like people have been picking up on the influenza information you've been bringing forward. I've been hearing a lot more conversation about it. You know, the president tweeted about it. What's going on with that?
I think the word is starting to get out. I think it's getting out slowly, but I think that our audience is highly responsible for it. In other words, you know, you and I can only do so much, but in order for the message to become viral, people have to share this stuff, right? So if the audience is sharing it on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram or however they're doing it, it appears that it's working. And the message is getting out there, and we've got a couple examples we're going to show the audience in just a minute here.
Yeah. And some of these tech giants, tech bozos, whatever people want to call them, jihadists, rubber-faced weirdos, they were in the Senate yesterday talking about how, you know, they're not censoring anybody. You know, Crowdsource the Truth was totally kicked off Facebook 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I was looking at YouTube analytics, and it wasn't too long ago, John, that something like 30%, I don't know how these analytics exactly work. I'm not an expert at that kind of stuff, but it was saying like the views were coming from Facebook to YouTube. That's totally gone now. So viewership is down.
Right.
I do like to remind people that every Friday, you and I are doing a sponsor exclusive show that people can still see on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and Subscribestar and Patreon/Crowdsource the Truth. It's really important that people stay with us and join us on those platforms. Why don't you give everybody a little idea of what we're going to be talking about today?
Sure. Let's jump over to the deck, and I've got a couple slides prepared, and I'll walk everybody through. We'll do a little bottom line up front, BLUF.
Yep.
Right. I'll show you guys a couple pictures here. So first thing, right after our show on Friday last week, so 1 week ago, we did a show where I talked about the Nobel Prize for Medicine winning paper that I believe I've published, meaning I think this is the leading candidate for the Nobel Prize for Medicine this year. And the reason is I've documented the complete eradication of influenza from planet Earth. And right after we talked about that on the show, and I think I sent you the document last night, my time, this morning, your time. I sent you a PDF. It's like a 35 or 40 page document that is the white paper, right? This is the actual submission. And you and I talked about this on the show a week ago. And the next day, it was covered by Daily Mail UK. All right. So the next day, this gets covered. Now,
I thought you were kidding because, I mean, have they ever given the Nobel Prize for Medicine to somebody who's not a doctor? We should say neither you, John, or I are medical doctors, and nothing that we ever discuss is intended to be advice, certainly not medical advice. We're not trying to treat anything, cure anything, diagnose anything. You and I are just examining data, sharing our opinions, discussing it. But have they ever given the Nobel Prize for Medicine to somebody who's not a MD or a PhD?
I don't know. I think there's a first time for everything, right? I think, you know, Greta Thunberg was disappointed that she didn't win. She had an expectation that she was going to win. Well, I want to compare my work to her work. All right. So we'll compare my white paper to her white paper, and we'll see who deserves the Nobel Prize. So I've documented the eradication of influenza from Earth. I mean, how do you not love that face?
But was she going for the Nobel Prize for Medicine or the Nobel Prize for yelling at people?
Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize.
Got it.
Because the glaciers are still melting at the end of the ice age. Okay, so all right. All right, so let's move on. So let's go back to the deck. So Mail Online or Daily Mail UK picks up the story the next day. All right, well, then what happens next? Let's go to the next page.
They never said anything about John Cohen in this story, though.
Oh, of course not. Come on. Of course not. All right, so on the next page, we've got just some quick bottom line up front. I just want to let everybody know where we stand. Despite everything you hear on CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, this is weekly deaths from COVID according to the CDC system, right? And I chart this every day.
In the United States?
In the United States. So this was updated just a few days ago. They don't update it every day. Mm-hmm. And this is the weekly death count in the United States since August 1st. So since August 1st, this is what's happening in the USA. All right, so these are just facts. And I don't know if anybody remembers the movie Sleeper with Woody Allen. And there's a scene in Sleeper where these guys have to clone somebody, and all they have to work with is the nose. And all these doctors are watching them in the operating theater, and they have to clone a body from the nose. And so they just dance around and say, we're checking the cell structure, and now we will clone the nose, and we're cloning the nose, and now the nose is
the nose.
Ultimately he kidnaps it, but before he kidnaps the nose, they just go through this charade of we're cloning the nose, we're checking the cell structure. It's one of the funniest things you've ever seen, despite what you think of Woody Allen, right? It's just an incredibly funny.
I loved his slapstick period. There was a time, we don't have to talk about Woody Allen, but this is a hilarious movie.
All right, but what I feel I'm seeing when I hear Nancy Pelosi use terms like science and data, to me, she's going cloning the nose because she's not really looking at the data. We have the data. You want to see the data, Madam Speaker? You can't just say data, science, dance around and move your hands around. That doesn't do anything. You have to actually look at the data. And so my question is to you, Madam Speaker, what's wrong with my data? Why won't you look at my data?
But to reiterate, John, this is not actually your data. This is data you're just obtaining from the CDC. We're not changing anything about it, adding anything to it. And we also have to remember, Nancy Pelosi was set up. It was a setup. And she needs a drink.
Well, you mean at the salon with the mask and all that thing. Yeah.
I just laughed so much when she said that.
To me, all of these senators who keep talking about the science and the data and the science and the data, what about the chart we just looked at a minute ago? We just looked at COVID deaths are going down week over week over week over week over week in the USA. Why don't you see this on CNN? And Madam Speaker, why are you giving the president a hard time? And Andrew Cuomo was saying he's blaming the president for this and that. Yeah. Just wait, Andrew. You just wait.
Right. People in the chat are saying that Woody Allen is a creep, but even bigger creep.
I said, regardless of what you say about, regardless of what you think about Woody Allen, the scene of cloning the nose simply by dancing around and saying we're cloning the nose is the metaphor for what the Senate is doing when they talk about data and science, and then they use Dr. Fauci in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Right? That's like talking about the Girl Scouts and Harvey Weinstein in the same sentence. You just don't want to do that.
What's his name? Alan Dershowitz tweeted something about Girl Scout cookies, that he likes their thin mints but not their thin skin. So I guess Alan Dershowitz prefers a little bit of a thicker child if he's going to get down.
Yeah, I think he needs to tone it down, quite frankly. If I were guiding him, I'd say, Alan, get up to Martha's Vineyard and be quiet. Yeah. All right. What we've got on the next slide. I mean, if this isn't just a gut punch to everybody in the United States and the world, quite frankly, I mean, this just tells the story. I mean, we're going to take a look when we go to our patron-only hour. I've got a couple video clips that I've queued up. In particular, there's a situation going on in Virginia in the United States where they're looking at closing the school system in Fairfax County for the entire year and not reopening until 2022. Right. And so the question is, well, why are you doing based on what? What are you basing these decisions on? And the slide that we're looking at right now is showing the United States to date, the deaths that are, and these are death certificate deaths. So these numbers are a little bit lower than your Johns Hopkins map, right? These are death certificate deaths from the coroners. And what this is showing. None. Well, it's 39 families. It's tragic stories.
Oh,
and I'm sure
sorry.
Each one
because this is in shadow. I didn't recognize it was the same color.
Yeah, so you got 39 kids, 5 to 14 years old, that have died with COVID. Now, again, we know the statistics are approximately 55% of the deaths have influenza. We know that 6% of the deaths only had COVID. And we know that the remaining have, on average, 2.6 comorbidities. So of these 39 kids that were 5 to 14, how many of them had cystic fibrosis? How many of them had some sort of chronic pulmonary
cancer
problem? Yeah, exactly. So we don't know the answer to that, but the scope of the problem nationwide in the United States, with a population of 330 million, is that 39 kids have died. Now, if we were to compare that, which we're not going to do this moment, we can do this later, we can look at how many kids die each year from influenza, right? And we don't close the schools, right? So this is nationwide in the U.S. And then when we go to our patron-only hour, I'm going to show you Virginia, and I'm going to show you the state, and we're going to look at, they're talking about closing the schools for the entire school year based on what again? Based on how many kids are dead? So,
well, because they say that the kids are going to infect adults when they come home or something like that.
No, okay. So let's be clear about that, right? And we're going to get to all of this Virginia thing and this whole argument. We got the heads of the school people on video, and it gets real interesting. So when we go patron only, I've got a whole bunch of content on this. But let's keep going in the deck, because I got a couple other slides I want to show everybody that are pretty exciting. Okay. So first of all, just so everybody knows, right? So this is like bottom line up front type stuff. I just want people to know where we stand with COVID. So of the 200 and something thousand people that are dead in the United States, when we do the age breakdown, the one we just showed you was 5 to 14. I expanded it to 5 to 24 years old, so that's, kindergarten, first grade, all your elementary school, junior high, high school, and college.
And graduate school at 24.
And graduate, right. So, and master's students, right. So, and there's less than 500 dead in the United States. So all these schools that have this, whatever's going on. And again, remember, these deaths do include car accidents. They do include suicides. They do include poisonings. They do include, right. So remember that. And then when we go to this next age category, which is 25 to 54, there's only 17,000 people dead in the whole country, right? It's 55 and older where all the activity is. And so, no wonder you got Florida, California, Arizona, right? These are retirement type places. And so if you've got a disease that's afflicting the older folks, well, go where the older folks are. So is it a big surprise that's happening in Florida? I didn't really think that Texas had such a big elderly population, but I guess Texans never leave.
That's right.
Texans don't retire to, they don't move to Florida. They stay in Texas. So that's why.
I think people go to Florida for the warm climate, like when you have arthritis and stuff like that.
Well, I think Florida is like a retirement destination for the Northeast. You've got a lot of people from the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Philadelphia area that end up retiring in Florida. I think you have the same kind of thing out west with Arizona. I remember when I was working in Los Angeles, a lot of the engineers that worked at Northrop Grumman and Hughes and stuff, when they would retire, they'd sell their houses in Los Angeles for $1.5 million, move to Arizona,
Oh yeah.
or Arizona and buy a house for 250,000
Right.
and end up with a bunch of money in the bank. So there was a lot of that going on, but that was 30 years ago. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that still goes on. Um,
Real quick,
Texas,
John.
yeah,
Sorry
go
to
ahead.
interject, but Chris Morell is telling us that in the UK, the slogan that they're advertising to children is "Don't kill Granny." Now, I mean, if
Oh,
you're a
that's
kid
lovely.
and somebody introduces the concept
That's
that
why we're doing
something
the show.
involuntary that you could do could kill your grandparents, just suggesting
Yeah.
that to a kid is like
Oh, that's
psychological
horrible.
torture.
That's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this. This show's important. And, these poor kids are being tormented over something that, again, I got to be careful what I say, right? So that's why we're just going to focus on the data. So that's why these pie charts are so important, because these are the CDC's numbers. So,
Right.
this putting it in perspective here, when the president says certain populations seem more susceptible than others, or certain populations seem almost immune, when you look at the number of people up to 55 years old and the impact it had on that population versus the 55 and older population, how do you argue with the president's logic there? I don't think you can. I think he's standing on solid ground with that argument.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
opinion. Let's go to the next slide, because I got a lot of good stuff to share before we go patron only. And I think we've only got a couple minutes left. All right, so this is Donald Trump Jr. Right after we had our show, and then it was tweeted by Daily Mail
Yeah.
about COVID killing off the flu. Donald Trump Jr. retweets the Daily Mail tweet. Now, that's kind of important here. You got to connect the dots. All right. Remember last week we talked about how the president put the tweet out that said 100,000 people have died from the flu, even though that
Yes.
the CDC has never said that 100,000 people have died from the flu. And I said that that's a move like putting your queen out in the middle of the board and sacrificing your queen in chess, which next week, by the way, we're going to study that game. The game where that was done, 1962, is a classic game. And it's an important thing to understand. So when the president puts out this tweet and says 100,000 people have died from the flu in the past, and the CDC's never said that, and he says this with less than 2-3 weeks left to go to an election, man, that took some guts. And now Donald Trump Jr. with this tweet, less than a week away from the election. This is a bold move unless he's got pocket aces. If he's got pocket aces, he's going to make a bold move just like this. And he's daring anybody to call him on it. Same thing the president did that we looked at last week with the president's tweet. When the president tweeted that 100,000 people have died from influenza, CDC's never said that publicly.
I wonder
Not
why
since.
Twitter didn't slam him for questioning the CDC on that.
That's the video we're going to look at. So in the testimony that took place at the Senate, Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut pops up the president's tweet and says this is misinformation and gets the whole thing wrong. So we're going to look at that in our patron-only hour, and I'm going to show you the clip of Richard Blumenthal using the president's clip, and we're going to call him out. And, when the senator from Connecticut gets it entirely wrong, it makes you wonder, that's the best you guys can do in Connecticut? That's it? Is Richard Blumenthal, this is the guy? This is the best you've got to send to Washington?
Well, wait a second.
Because
There's
he's
something
way
you
wrong.
got to see here about Richard Blumenthal, because misquoting tweets is hardly the grossest offense this scumbag has been involved in. This is a picture of him in Libya with John McCain and Lindsey Graham receiving an award from this guy Belhaj, who is a terrorist that they put in charge over there, and he's smiling like a dope.
And the plot thickens.
That's him, right?
Richard Blumenthal's Richard Blumenthal.
That's him.
The senator from Connecticut. I think he's been serving. He's a pretty senior guy. He's been there for a long time. And we're going to look at his testimony. And he's quoting the president's tweet and saying that this is misinformation.
Yeah, because he knows he's going to be sucked down the drain if the swamp gets drained.
No, we're going to examine that way more closely. We're going to look at the clip. We're going to listen to what he says, and then we're going to look at the facts, and we're going to do that in the Patron-only hour. Piers Morgan, I'm not sure if everybody remembers Piers Morgan. He used to be famous some time ago. I don't remember why. But his tweet here says, "Can all COVIDiots please just unfollow me and F off? This second wave is extremely serious, and I'm not interested in your insane conspiracy theories, your dumb fake charts, your proof that COVID's not as bad as the flu, or any of your ignorant, abusive garbage."
Which that tweet is not. Ignorant, abusive.
No, come on. Now he's I mean, who wouldn't want to have a spot of tea and some crumpets with Piers? Come on. He's a delight. So then when you scroll down, though, look at the retort. Look at what that response. The insane theories are published by the WHO. They indicate a disease with a similar footprint as H1N1. Feel free to listen to pies, shut your country, and cripple your economy and social life. Your GDP was negative 20% in Q2. Enjoy the ride. People are catching on. A disease with a similar footprint as H1N1. They're watching.
Who told you that first?
People are paying attention, and the word is spreading. All right, let's go one more slide or two, and then we're going to have to jump to our Patron-only hour, I think. All right, this is another tweet that came out. National ICU picture of COVID. Red arrow shows rapid, etc. So, and again, another comparison of H1N1. So the more of this I see on Twitter, people comparing COVID with the flu and understanding that, wait a second, we had one and not the other, or we had both, or let's get this straight, right? What are you guys saying? This is John Brennan, another guy I can't wait to have a barbecue with.
Yeah, as long as he's on the rotisserie.
So here, let's take a look at his tweet. And this is recent. This was October 27th. So it was just a couple days ago. During the 2009 H1N1 pandemic, President Obama and Biden insisted that science, facts, and data, he's cloning the nose, drive administration policy in action. Medical experts were valued, and Americans were told the truth. So that is what you would call a bold-faced lie, right?
Yeah.
When you just say to somebody, we told you the truth, that's like me telling you right now, right? This is a perfectly normal Rubik's Cube, right? So if this is a perfectly normal Rubik's Cube, Americans were told the truth, right? So when John Brennan says these things, it's the same as me telling you this is perfectly normal. He's just lying to you.
Yeah.
This is absolutely not normal, okay? This is not normal, but I'm going to tell you it is in order to do my magic trick. The difference is I don't get tens of millions of dollars when the trick is over. These clowns do.
Well, right? You're also not threatening anybody's livelihood or safety by playing with a Rubik's Cube.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. So his tweet, though, this condescending tweet, talking about how during that outbreak you were told the truth. Really? Were you told about Jeffrey Taubenberger resurrecting H1N1 and Walter Reed? Because the video that I put out on the Johnny Hoover channel this week is absolutely outperforming all my videos of late. This new video talks about the people versus Anthony Fauci. And in this video, we talk about the resurrection of the Spanish flu, the H1N1 Spanish flu. And that video with 6,000 views in 2 days is way more than I usually get.
Well, lately, back in the day, we used to get 6,000 views 5 minutes after the video was done.
I used to get 2,500 an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to get 2,500 views an hour, 50,000, 80,000, 100,000 views. Yeah. So the people versus Anthony Fauci, people are really responding to that. This documents the resurrection of H1N1 and also talks about the depletion of susceptibles. There's a couple clips in that video where there are doctors and epidemiologists explaining the depletion of susceptibles concept and how this is how these things go away. This is what happens, and they follow a certain pattern, and they always do. And if they didn't, we'd be extinct.
Yeah, right. Viruses would rule the world.
Well, they kind of do, right?
Instead
so
of just Congress.
It's safe to say, by the way, it is safe to say viruses do rule the world. So let's be real clear about that. The oceans, I think viruses consume 30 to 40% of the bacteria in the ocean every day.
Viruses do.
Viruses consume 30 to 40% of the bacteria that's in the ocean every single day. So now you tell me what this organism is that we're living on when 3/4 of it is filled with virus that's consuming the bacteria every day. And you tell me where we live. All right, we'll talk about that next time Shep comes on the show.
Yeah, I've been texting with Shepard lately. He's working on his movie. John, we're just about out of time here on YouTube, but we're going to be transitioning over to the sponsor exclusive segment on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, simulcast on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. It's a great way for people to support the show and to support your work, John. You know, we have seen with Glenn Greenwald leaving The Intercept, anytime you get millions of dollars to invest, you know, somebody invests in whatever, even if you're in charge of it, if they have the money, they're going to tell you what to do. This is the main reason why you and I have done this micro sponsorship concept. You know, I started this with Crowdsource the Truth, and it allows us to keep that kind of economic influence out of the reporting. People who sponsor the show sponsor for low dollar amounts, and we distribute it over a lot of people so the viewers can be assured that no financial entity has the influence to tell us not to talk about something or edit or censor or anything like that. People can join us on Patreon and Subscribestar in just 2 minutes. So we've got to get over there. See everybody there.